the officials of the National Environment Management Authority (NEMA) consider there is a problem with the country's municipal councils considering the uncoordinated exploitation of coastal resources.
We've not gotten it right in planning. As I speak to you today, Mombasa is using an outdated town plan. It was not planned for the other outlying areas, which, as you correctly said, have witnessed a lot of expansion in the tourist facilities.
Section 55 of the Environmental Management and Coordination Act (EMCA) provides for protection of the coastal zone, while Part 6 and 7 of the same legislation requires that the environmental impact assessment and environmental audit and monitoring, respectively, should be carried out on any developments within the coastal zone. Experts say the weakness of this legislation is the source of problems.
If we have regulation, we have had a legislation that is a decade old, and we only came up with regulation, it means we have been lagging behind, that something didn't fit, and that is lacuna that needs to be addressed as soon as possible. Because even if we had regulations, people have to be acquainted with those regulations to understand them, to know what is required of them. And that does not include just the coastal establishment and property owners and all that. It includes even private citizens who are supposed to know and take part in the management of those important areas.
In law, there is no clear definition of what constitutes the coastal front. Yet, the complex nature of coastal resources cannot be gainsaid.
And that you must figure out what are the likely scenarios in case the sea level is going to rise. So all those are factors that have to be put at the back of our minds when we are dealing with integrated coastal zone management. And all those are issues that the law must take up seriously.
The sectoral approach to different issues related to coastal and marine environment have not yielded results. It is because of this dilemma that the integrated coastal management concept was introduced.
This is a new approach we have had, and the aim of ICZM in the coastal zone management is to integrate the efforts of all the stakeholders to ensure that they work as a team.
It was meant to include communities to participate in protection of environment.
Integrated coastal zone management cannot fail. It's something that has, it is consultative. You define a problem, you identify a problem, you bring all stakeholders on board so that you tackle that particular problem as a group. Integrated coastal zone management is something that is working in quite a number of areas within this world. So there's no reason as to why it should fail in Kenya. And I think right now, Coast Development Authority and even Kenya Marine and Fisheries Research Institute, we are doing a lot of activities related to coastal zone area management.
ICZM thus highlights the value of coastal resources such as economic, tourism, mining, agriculture and fisheries, as well as the ecological values as derived from the mangrove ecosystems, wildlife and fish breeding grounds, as well as buffers from storms and related hazards. Players in the industry believe the ICZM will only work if there is government commitment.
Njia ya kutatua ni mpaka tuwe tumejaliwa na kupata viongozi ambao wanaweza kuangalia wananchi wao vile maisha wanavyoishi.
Bylaws provide for unlimited access to beaches by everyone, and fishermen, on the other hand, wants the government to ensure strict measures on those violating the laws. Coastlines are more densely populated than any areas of the world, and as climate change becomes an undeniable reality, the occurrence of rising water levels, intense storm surges, flooding and erosion is increasing at an alarming rate. And while Hurricane Katrina is still fresh in the public consciousness, a growing number of studies are focusing on the wisdom of mitigating coastal vulnerabilities by building to strong construction codes, erecting defensive infrastructure, and restoring ecosystems on the seashores. Tourism players suggest making the beach a no-trade zone, while developers want laws reversed to save the current trend. Some of the world's best case examples where tourism thrives do so because of excellent management. Strict rules on private development of beaches are observed and huge penalties meted out on violators.
It is a livelihood issue because people depend on the coast for their livelihoods. Whether it's earning a salary from a tourism, you run a glass bottom boat, or you are feeding your family by the fish or the shells that you pick up, it's everybody's issue. And that is why I think when we're planning or looking at policies that develop the coastal area, everybody should become involved.
The problem of hiving off of beach plots for private use infringes on the basic tenets of environmental governance. This also puts at risk efforts to diversify domestic tourism, which will not move fast enough to make up for some of the long-term damage caused by the developers. According to the United Nations Environment Programme, short-term gains might lead to long-term pains.
Kenya today is a country that is rich in some of the most pristine, not only beaches, but mangrove forests, coastal ecosystems, close to the beaches and onshore fisheries also, on which many people still rely. Clearly right now the commercial interests and the interests of those who want to capture the value of that conservation that has partly been promoted by government but also by the local communities who have conserved these areas will be lost if it is simply sacrificed for commercial and property development. So I think a very deliberate focus on the coastal zones is not only useful from the point of view of preserving access to beaches, it is part of Kenya's natural capital.
Enormous time and resources have gone into the two processes of formulating a national policy on environment, and particularly in the case of coastal issues, putting in place an integrated coastal zone management policy. But until they are concluded and those policies promulgated, we are not yet there.
But all this will come to naught if no clear legislation is introduced.